Hi, I'm Heidi Claire, the Family Ministry Director here at Canyons, and we are so thankful to have you joining us online. We are really excited today. We get to hear from our lead pastor, Andrew Powell, and it is just a great message that speaks to really where we're at right now and what is going on, and just helps us to remember who Jesus has called us to be. So thanks so much for joining us online. We hope you have a great Sunday.
I think it's special that we get to gather in this way. You know, some people would view this as a time that we're limited and held back, but I think it's pretty awesome that God's allowing us to meet via technology. I think it's so cool. And something I want to remind you of right now is this very simple thing, and that is that fear wants to tell us all that we're isolated right now. But actually, Jesus wants to remind us that He has never been more present in our lives. If some of you are seeking peace or answers, I just want to remind you that peace is not the absence of fear, it's the presence of a person, and that person's name is Jesus. And whether you're in a car, in your living room, in your kitchen, outside, inside, it doesn't matter. Jesus is there with you. And we're going to sing two songs. The first song is one that many of you guys know. It's a song called Wide Open. We're going to sing a pretty brand new one second that we'll be singing both of these on Sunday together. But this first song says this: if I make my bed in darkness and I try my best to hide, I cannot escape from your presence. David even writes about this in Psalm 139. He says, if I ascend to heaven or go down to the depths, you're still there with me. So hear me loud and clear, Gwinnett Church. No matter where you're at, you are not alone. You're not alone. So go ahead and fight that feeling, and let's choose faith over our fears. Let's choose freedom over our fears, because gosh, He's with you. He's with us. Come on, let's sing together. No height, no depth, no life or final breath could ever separate us from your love. No failure, no mistake, no loneliness or pain could ever separate us from your love. Could ever separate us from your love. And on the other side of everything I'm afraid of, you were standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Even in my deepest doubts and my wonder, you were standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I'm healed, made strong. Oh, I found where I belong. Forever I'm alive now in your love. Come on. I'm changed, unchained by your amazing grace. Forever I'm alive now in your love. Oh, now on the other side of everything I'm afraid of, come on, you were standing with your arms wide open, wide open. And even in my deepest doubts and my wonder, you were standing with your arms wide open, wide open. Lord, I can see you standing there. Oh, you're with us, you're for us. If I make my bed in darkness, if I try my best to hide, you know the furthest ocean, you give the morning its light. I can't run from your presence, 'cause there's no place that far. So I run to you, my Savior. Why? 'Cause there's safety in your arms. God, if I make my bed in darkness, come on, if I try my best to hide, you know the farthest ocean, you give the morning its light. I can't run from your presence. There's no place that
He'll never leave us. He's promised that. Even when times get hard, when times are chaotic, He's always with us. We just want to draw close, be with Him. Beneath the surface of my anxious imagination beckons a calmness that is found in You alone, and it washes over every doubt, every imperfection. Jesus, Your presence is the comfort of my soul. There's nowhere I'd rather be when You're singing over me. Oh, I just want to be here with You. Yeah. I'm lost in the mystery. I'm finding Your love for me. Oh, I just want to be here with You, Lord. And here in the waiting, I won't worry about tomorrow. No need to focus on the things I can't control, and all my attention on the wonder of this moment. Jesus, Your presence is the comfort of my soul. Oh, there's nowhere I'd rather be when You're singing over me. Yeah. Oh, I just wanna be here with You, Lord. Oh, in the middle of the storm, I'm lost in Your mystery. are singing over me. Oh, I just wanna be here with you. I'm lost in the mystery. I'm lost in the mystery. I'm found in your love for me. Oh, I just wanna be here with you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you that you're here in the middle of the chaos with us in everything. In the middle of the lies that are fear, in the middle of the lies that is isolation. God, you are our victory. You consume us in times of darkness. We just want to feel you with us. We're desperate for that, and we hold on to that. And we thank you, God, for who you are. And that's all we want to focus on. So we give this time to you, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen.
Welcome to Canyons Church Online today. We're so glad to have you with us. But can I just share something, you and me, and just keep it between us, okay? We don't need to tell everybody else that we know about this. In fact, just keep it with us online and those of us that you've shared online with, and just keep it in our circle, which is a lot of people. But can we just keep this between us? I have participated. This is discouraging information, super discouraging. I have participated in every bad decision that I have ever made. I've participated in every single one. Not only have I participated, I was in the driver's seat. You know, the moment where I bought the vehicle and I thought, I don't know if that was a good decision, hindsight, but my name was signed by my hand on the papers. You know, the dating relationships that you look back on and you regret, that was me. Those were my choices. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's relationship, maybe it's something else for you. But here's what I know. Looking back at my greatest regrets, the things that I wish I hadn't done, I was the one that made the decision. It's super discouraging to think back that way. Something that helps me, though, is I know something about you, too. I know that you have participated also in every bad decision you've ever made. So we're both in the same boat. We've both made the bad decisions that we've made. And we look back on those with regret, with frustration. They led us to the place that we're at right now. But this is what we know. This is what we know about ourselves. That we face our greatest challenge every morning in the mirror. Now, let me explain that to you a little bit. Because on the first instance, you're like, wait, are you saying something about my appearance? I thought this was a one-way camera. I didn't know that you could see me right now. I didn't put makeup on today. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I know to be true is that it is difficult to lead you. It is difficult to look at yourself in the mirror and evaluate and move forward. Our history affirms this in ourselves. We know this, that when we try to look at ourselves accurately in the mirror, that is one of the most difficult moments. And it's not because we get caught up on our hair or our eyes. It's because we don't want to actually see us for where we're at right now in this moment. Self-evaluation is difficult and it's hard. Now, one of the best ways, we're leading up to Memorial Day weekend, and I just wanted to take a couple weeks and have a bigger, broader conversation. And I believe that this is the best way that we can actually value those that have gone before us. To honor them is to actually put ourselves in a position to be able to move forward in life and be the best version of ourselves. So in order to honor those that have gone before us and opened the door and sacrificed for us and provided opportunities for us today, we need to lead ourselves well. So we're going to talk about this the next couple weeks. And it's not going to be easy conversation. It's not going to be it's not going to be super encouraging. You're not going to leave going, "Oh my goodness, I feel so much better about myself." You're going to probably leave these messages thinking, "I've got a lot of work to do." And that's okay, because you are worth it. And your family is worth it. And your kids are worth it. And your future depends on it. So we're going to be talking the next couple weeks about leading the American in the mirror. This is the direction we're heading. Self-leadership is critical. It's important. And honestly, it's something that this country and around our world right now is lacking. And we can actually be the proponent of this. We can move forward in this direction together collectively. So something and this might be something that I can only speak for myself on, but I'm guessing that there's probably more people that would be able to raise your hand and be able to go along with me on this. That I've done more to undermine my own success. I've done more to slow down the progress that I've made. I've done more to disrupt my own potential than any political candidate elected to office. In fact, I could say this about myself. I know that I have had a more negative, I've undermined, I've done all these things more than anybody else in my life. Not just political candidate, but than anybody else. It was my choices, it was my decisions. I disrupted my own progress. I disrupted my own momentum. And yeah, maybe some other people were with me. Maybe some other people opened a door for an opportunity, but it was me that walked through that door. It was myself alone that made those choices. And so we're going to talk about the next couple minutes about why this decision, this self-leadership question, this opportunity that we have to focus on our own progress in life. What's the next step for ourselves? Why this question and this topic and this conversation is so critically important. To start off with, you'll never be a leader worth following if you don't lead yourself well. And some of you might be thinking, well, I don't know if there's other people even following me right now, but if you think of it in terms of the John Maxwell leadership, that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. You influence people in your life. So you have a level of leadership. And maybe it's at home, maybe it's at work, maybe it's within your friendships, your relationships, but you have a level of leadership. And in order to make you a leader worth following, you have to start by leading yourself. You can't start by leading other people. Now, I understand, and probably some of you have experienced this before. You've been part of a team, you've been part of an organization where you had an incredible, amazing leader that was bringing the whole organization forward, and everything was great. And you would even identify them as an exceptional leader. But you also, when you peeked behind the curtains and you saw their home life, when you saw their, the life that they lived behind the curtains, it changed for you, didn't it? In fact, you recognize that self-leadership and leadership of an organization or leadership of a team is different. They're not the same as each other. You can be good at one and bad at the other. They're independent of each other. But in order to be a leader worth following, it starts with self-leadership. This is where it all begins. One of my favorite quotes that Andy Stanley has is it's simply this: many of you like your parents, but you don't want to be like your parents. That's a difficult one to say out loud. Many of you actually like your parents, but you don't want to be like them. As a young parent, this weighs on my shoulders. I want my son to be like me. But this is the first moment that we recognize this in our life of good or negative, positive or negative self-leadership. This is what my son is going to see behind the curtains, what I'm like at home. Do I lead myself well? Because it's not enough just to say the words. It's not enough to just say honesty is important and valuable if I'm also being dishonest behind the scenes. It's not enough to say church is important if you're not going to church somewhere, or not investing in church somewhere, or not doing something about it. It's not enough to say that marriage is a high priority in your life. You can say that all you want, but if the example at home is that you mistreat your spouse, is that you're actually a greedy spouse, you're in it for yourself and what you can get out of it. You're never looking to serve, you're always looking to gain from this. How can I get her to do that? How can I get him to do this for me? If that's your priority, if that's the focal point of your marriage, then your kids, honestly, your kids are going to see right through that. It's not enough for your words to be accurate. Your actions have to be accurate. That's how you lead yourself well, and that's how you become a leader worth following. Now, the second reason is this. Exceptional self-leadership is the key to sustained influence. Exceptional self-leadership is the key to sustained influence. Now, again, there's a big difference between influence and authority, right? Authority keeps you within the parameters, right? Don't go left, don't go right, stay in the middle. We don't allow you to go outside of the parameters, or there's repercussions. That's authority, demanding. Influence is directionally moving someone in a direction. Come forward with me. Come follow me. Come in this way. It's not demanding that you don't go that way. It's encouraging someone and allowing someone to move in your direction. And as parents, this is it. I mean, honestly, this is it. You may have moments where you are required to be the authoritarian in the situation. You are the adult, by the way. So you should be in charge. But more important than your authority is your influence on your children's lives. And if you're on a team, what's more important than the role that you have, the title that you have, the job description that you have, the office that you have, what's more important than that is the influence that you have. I would argue that influence is far more powerful. It's far more important than authority. And if you want an example, simply look to Jesus, right? That's probably cliche to say at church, but that's the reality. Jesus didn't have a huge role. He didn't have a huge title. He was called teacher. But his influence changed the world. It changed the world. 2,000 years later, it is still changing lives today. That is influence. That's amazing. That's the type of power that influence has over authority. We can't make people do things. You know, you might have authority, you might have a badge, but you can't make people do things. You can only keep people from doing things within authority, right? That's when it's a small child, it's called timeout. That's it. You've lost your privileges. Go to timeout. Sit by yourself in the corner for a while. No toys, right? As an adult, that's not called timeout anymore. It's just called prison. That's where you go when you lose your privileges. You lose that, right? You can't force someone to do something. You can't force someone to do their homework. You can't force someone to make a good choice, a good decision. You can't force someone into a relationship and make them healthy and within healthy boundaries in a relationship. You can't force them to do that. But you can keep someone from making bad choices eventually. Eventually, the repercussions will catch up. Now, something else we know about the sustained part of the key to sustained influence is exceptional self-leadership. The sustained part is this: great leaders last because they lead themselves first. Right? They lead themselves first. And we see this when you follow someone for a while and then they drop out. When you follow someone around, you read their books and you're like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing leader. I've learned so much from them, and then they disappear. Why does that happen? Typically, more often than not, it's a self-leadership aspect that caused them to burn out, to flame out, to be taken out because of their own self-leadership. So self-leadership prolongs, it extends your influence. Whether it be at home, whether it be at work, whether it be in an organization, whether it be in a community. Self-leadership is so critical and so important. Now, those are some reasons why this is important. We're going to move forward the rest of the morning. We're going to look at 3 decisions that we can all make. 3 decisions that we can make. They're very, very simple. They're very easy. Every single one of us, regardless of where you're at on your faith journey, whether you believe and you've been a Christian your whole life, or whether you're just figuring this out, we can all make these 3 decisions. Okay? It's very clear. I'm going to try to make them very clear at least. So let's start off with the first decision. Decision number 1. I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. For whatever reason, we feel like it's the worst thing in the world to feel bad at yourself, and we've got to work hard to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. There are worse things than feeling bad about yourself. For example, the behavior that makes you feel bad about yourself, if you don't actually evaluate yourself and feel bad for a little bit, you may not grow beyond that, and it's a self-perpetuating cycle. You will continue to feel bad about yourself because you haven't corrected the behavior, because you haven't taken the moment to look at yourself in the mirror and evaluate, is this the type of person I want to be? Is this the direction I want my life to move in? So feeling bad about yourself, that's not the worst thing in the world. There are worse things, like staying in the same rut that you were in. Continue on. Jeremiah. Let's talk about Jeremiah for a little bit. This is an Old Testament prophet. About 2,700 years ago. So he's around the 7th century BC. And if you've read the Old Testament before, you probably know that the nation of Israel would go in cycles. And they would follow after God for a while, and they would be doing really well. Everything would be working out well. Life was good. And then they'd gradually drift from that. And they'd start to adopt the things the customs the cultures that other nations around them were doing. They would even adopt their gods and their practices, right? So God was a good God, and he would look down and say, I'm a good father. I'm not going to let my kids go off after other gods. And so in the cycle, after following God and be good for a while, then they'd leave God, and there'd be a generation or two where they left and they kind of focused on other things. He would bring about correction. And right as he was bringing about correction, he would bring about a vocal peace, a prophet that would speak on his behalf to the people. So Jeremiah was one of those prophets. Jeremiah, again, at this time, God's like, hey, you guys are drifting. I need to bring you back. And so the way he was doing this essentially is like, you're going to be in timeout for a while. You're done. It's too late. The repercussions are catching up. I'm going to put you in timeout. This is going to be a correcting moment that you're going to eventually be brought back, but you got to go through the timeout first. And I'm going to put you in timeout by allowing Babylonia to come in. The Babylonian army, they're on their way. They're going to come in, they're going to take over. You're going to be in timeout for a while. And Jeremiah is telling the king, hey, at this point, it's too late. At this point, you're better off not to try to fight against the Babylonian army. At this point, you should just open the doors and let them walk in, because that's going to save lives, and it's just going to get on with the thing that we got to go through anyway. We need to change the course, yes. We need to change the direction, yes. But at this point, the repercussions, they're knocking on the door. You should just open the gates and let them in. Obviously not a popular opinion with the king. He ends up getting thrown into a well. He doesn't stop telling people and yelling people. He's yelling out of the well, repent, repent. Anyway, that's Jeremiah. One of the things that Jeremiah says, though, in chapter 17, verse 9, and again, this is kind of, he is the mouthpiece for God. So this is God telling us. And this is a truth that was way back, almost 3 millennia ago. It's still true today. It doesn't change. It doesn't change because of our society, because of the progress forward that we've made. It doesn't change. This is still true today. Verse 9 of chapter 17. The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? Let's be honest. That's not what your mama says. That's not what your grandma says. Oh, you have a precious heart. Oh, you have a sensitive. Oh, you're so nice. That's not what God says. He says your heart is deceitful. Your heart is deceitful. There's a current song right now. How current? I don't know. Selena Gomez sings it, so that's current enough for me. And the first time I heard it, I thought, this is awful. It doesn't make me feel good at all. The heart wants what it wants. Right? The heart wants what it wants. As much as that sounds awful, it's reality. That if we go after our heart, it doesn't guarantee that this is a good thing to go after. Our heart is deceitful. We shouldn't just follow blindly our heart, because that's not necessarily the best thing for us. That's not how we develop into a better person. That's not how we become a better husband or father or worker in our job, is to just follow our heart. That gets us into trouble a lot. In fact, if you just follow your heart, that's how you come up with these questions later on. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I went there. I don't know why I talked to her. I don't know why I called him back. I don't know why I made that decision about work. I don't know why I quit. I don't understand it. I don't know why. Well, it's because your heart wanted something and you just followed after your heart. On the front end, when you're battling, you have this tension, right? And you know what's probably better. You know what's probably wise, a wise choice. And at the same time, you know what you want. And so you just say, I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to anyway. Maybe you don't say that out loud. Maybe you do. But that's an internal conversation that you have. I'm just going to do it anyway. Here's what we know. Here's what I know. Here's what I know about me. Here's what I know about you. You are a sucker for you. You are a sucker for you. Right? You know exactly the words that you need to say. You know exactly the frame of mind that you need to be in. You know the argument to get you there in order to get what you want. Right? This is why the best salesmen in the world, they just present you with some information and they step back because they know that you will talk yourself into it better than they ever will. In fact, when they try to talk you into it, it just feels yucky. But when they step back, they let you talk yourself into it. And it works out. That's how come they're the best salesmen in the world. Because they let you sell yourself on it more than they sell you on it. Now, you can't lead yourself as long as you're lying to yourself. You can't do it. You can't lead yourself and lie to yourself at the same time. And Jeremiah would probably tell you this. I would agree with it. God would probably say this. If you're leading a group of people, if you're leading a team, if you're leading, if you're at work and you're part of the hiring process, and over time you start to realize that one of the people on your team is a perpetual liar, what do? You fire a liar. Right? Some of you, like what Jeremiah would probably say, some of you need to fire the liar that is in you. You need to stop lying to yourself. You need to get brutally honest with yourself. Now, one of the questions that allows you to stop lying, one of the questions that moves you in the direction of telling the truth and being honest, it starts with this. When you come up against a crossroads, you're about to make a decision, you ask this question: why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I making this purchase? Why am I buying this vehicle right now? Why do I think that this is the best move for us financially right now? Why am I buying these clothes? Why am I wearing these specific clothes? Why am I calling her back again? Why am I doing this? And if you ask this question and you have to sit back and think through your answer, that might help. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to ask a second question. Why am I doing this really? Because the first one is your canned response. Remember, we talk ourselves into the worst decisions that we make. The first answer to the question is typically the one that we will give our spouse, the one we will give our parents, the one that we will give the person that is asking the question. It's just the canned response. It's the one that you can justify, you can get around. But when you add, why am I doing this really? It forces us to pause. It forces you to evaluate. What is the true motivation behind this decision? Is this an ego thing? Is this a longing thing that we want to be seen or perceived in a certain way? Or is this just us trying to chase love somewhere? Is this just us trying to find someone to accept us somehow, some way? What is the true, honest, underlying reason for our behavior? This decision we're about to make. Why am I doing this, really? When you ask that question, it places everything in a different light. Politicians, almost all of them know some of the words of Jesus, right? It's these words: the truth shall set you free. They like that one a lot. And it's true. The truth shall set you free. But if you chase this down, if you stretch this out, if you actually tease this out long enough, you'll get to an understanding that not only will the truth set you free, but dishonesty imprisons. Dishonesty imprisons. And some of you right now are imprisoning yourselves. You've got yourself locked up. And you need the truth to set you free. You need to look at yourself in the mirror. You need to ask the hard questions and be honest. Tell yourself the unfiltered truth. We've probably all been around some people that don't have filters, and they just, whatever's in their mind comes out of their mouth. I think it's actually healthy for us to be able to do that individually on our own. Maybe not publicly, where everyone can hear, but we should be able to have the unfiltered truth in our lives. We need to be answering with unfiltered truth in our lives. Unfiltered truth allows us to see where we're actually at, to see where we're leading, to see why we're leading, to see why the direction that we're going and why. Now, so decision number 1, I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. Second decision is this: I will prioritize what I value the most over what I want now. That's a hard one. I will prioritize what I value most over what I want now. Where are you leading your teams? Where are you leading yourself? Why are you leading there? What's the reason behind it? Rarely do what you want right now and where you want to end up and what you truly value the most, those are rarely the same answer. What you want right now is different than what you value most. So if you value something most and more than what you want right now, then why are you settling for what's right in front of you at this moment? We did a series a while back, and it was called How to Get What You Really Want. How to Get What You Really Want. If you missed that series, like I said, it was a while ago. You go back, research it, Google it, you'll find it. It's a fantastic series you should check out. But the main premise of the series is that what we want right now is often spotlighted. It's in the light, right? What we want right now, we focus on it, we look at it. But what is lurking in the shadows of what we want right now is the value most part. It's the thing that we actually value. It's what is behind what we want right now. But it's not necessarily what is right now, if that makes sense. For example, this isn't my example, this is just a made-up example. So let's say I wanted to buy a boat. And that's all I talk about. I just want a boat. I want a boat. I want a boat. We live by some beautiful rivers. I want a boat to go out and have fun. I want a boat. I research the boat. I pick out the model that I want. I figure everything out about the boat that I want right now. The question is, do you really want a boat? Or is there something else that you value more? For example, in this instance, maybe what I value more is the opportunity for family and friends to unplug for a while, to actually look at each other in the face, to laugh with one another, to have fun with each other again without a screen in someone's hand, to enjoy an afternoon without disruptions, without work, without chores, without anything that you're facing right now. Let's just go take a moment and be with each other, quality time. Maybe that's actually your higher value, that you value more than what you want right now. See, if you have that honest conversation with yourself, you can realize and recognize that the boat's not necessarily the answer to what you want, but the boat can actually lead in that direction. That if you have an honest conversation with your family, hey, I want to do something. I don't know financially if it's wise right now to buy a boat, but I want to move in that direction because I want the quality time. Maybe there's some steps that you can take in between before you take a second mortgage out to buy a boat, right? Maybe there's some things that you can do ahead of time that would move you in the direction of spending quality time with family. Maybe that would become a priority for you if you just introduce the conversation. But the understanding, the reality is that if we don't know, if we fail to discover what you really value, you will never get what you really want. You've got to ask those questions. You've got to look what's in the shadows rather than what's in the spotlight of right now. Now, if you're a Jesus follower, if that is the decision that you've made, that you're going to submit your life to Jesus, that you're going to live your life in a certain way, as best you can to be an example of who Jesus is to you, how Jesus has treated you, that you want to do that to other people, you're following Jesus. If that's you, if you've made that choice, then we actually have a little bit of a twist to this also. Because it's not just about figuring out what we want and even more so what we value the most. It's figuring out what Jesus values the most. And that is our highest priority in life. To figure out what Jesus values most and then to go after that thing first and foremost. The good news as cryptic as it can be sometimes when we read Scripture, when we read the Bible, as difficult as it can be to kind of wade through verses and see exactly what's being said, Jesus makes this pretty clear. There's this moment in John that's recorded where Jesus is having a conversation with his disciples. And in John chapter 13, verse 34, he says, "A new command I give you, love one another," which the disciples around would be like, Jesus, that's not a new command. That's not a new one. In fact, you didn't even come up with that. That's been around for longer than just right now. Jesus would say, wait, hold on. I'm not done yet. Haven't finished. Let me continue. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And the example that Jesus gives happens very shortly after that Jesus lays down his life for them, for us. That's the example that he gives us. That's how we love one another, is by sacrificing, by serving, by prioritizing somebody else over ourselves. To love with every ounce that we have is to prioritize someone else over ourselves. You know, we often talk about the golden rule, right? We try to teach our kids the golden rule. You try to, teach it at school, make sure that everybody knows the golden rule, that treat other people the way that you want to be treated. If you're familiar with North Point churches, if you've been around Canyons Church for a while, you've probably heard us talk about the platinum rule. It kind of one-ups the golden rule. The platinum rule is to treat other people not how you want to be treated. Because that gets into justified, that gets into like, well, I guess it'll be this will be enough. To treat other people how Jesus treated you. To love other people how Jesus loved you. To sacrifice for one another how Jesus sacrificed for you. That is the platinum rule. I mean, it just bumps it up. It takes it up another notch, another level. If you've been around Canyons, you're probably tired of me talking about loving other people. You hear me say it almost week in and week out. And here's how important is it truly to love other people. Like, I get it. We're supposed to love everybody. We're supposed to be nice. Okay. Love, 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 love. I'm tired of it. It's old, right? It's on repeat. I will move on from talking about loving other people well once we get that one figured out and squared away. Once we can put a check mark in that box, we'll move on. Okay. How important is this? How important is this conversation to have? How important is loving other people? This is what Jesus says. He continues on. He says, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, that you are my followers, if you love one another. That it's not how well you know the Bible. It's not how perfect you live your life. It's how you treat one another. It's how you love one another. That is how people will know that you followed after Jesus. And if that's the identifier piece, if that's what you want to be, if you want to be a Jesus follower, this is it. This is how you do that. You love one another well. Now let's move on, jump ship to another person I think that we should pay attention to. His name is the Apostle Paul. He wrote a large amount of the New Testament. In fact, the Apostle Paul, incredibly interesting story. You should read about him in the book of Acts. But Paul starts off trying to chase down Christians, trying to wipe out this Jesus movement. He is in opposition of the disciples. He's trying to track them down and end them, right? He wants all this whole Jesus movement to end. And then he has an experience with Jesus. And then his whole world changes. It's like in the middle of a game, he takes his jersey off and puts the other jersey from the opposing team on. He changes teams mid-game. And he becomes this proponent. He becomes not just a proponent, he becomes an incredible, incredible leader in this Christian Jesus movement. Plants a bunch of churches, writes a bunch of letters. And in one of those letters, this is what he writes. Galatians chapter 5, verse 6. This is what Paul says. The only thing that counts is, and any time that you ask someone that you respect a great deal, well, what's the number one priority? What's the most important thing? And they start off with the only thing that counts is. They've boiled it down for you. This is the answer. This is what you're looking for. The only thing that counts is knowledge expressing itself through debate. No, but if you look at social media, it seems like that would be it, right? I want to learn more so I can out-argue everybody else around me. So I can point the finger at everybody else and tell everybody else what they're doing wrong and how I would do it differently and how wrong you actually are. That's not what Paul says. The only thing that counts is how close to perfect you can get. That you have to be perfect in order to be accepted. It's a short list. It's not what he says. The only thing that counts is absolute obedience. That you can't question authority, you can't question the people around you, you can't question God. It's not what he says. Now, individually on their own, right? The pursuit of knowledge, expanding your understanding, that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. We should be doing that anyway. Moving in the direction, obviously perfection is outside of our reach, but moving in the direction of bettering ourselves, that's a good thing. We should be doing that. Obedience. If we're submitting ourselves to Jesus, if we're submitting ourselves to God, we should be obedient. That's a good thing. But that's not the thing that counts. That's not the most important thing. What Paul says, the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Faith expressing itself through love. That's what counts. That's the most important. Now, to put that in your context right now, maybe you're quarantined. How does that work out? Maybe you have your kids home for an extended period of time now, and you're trying to figure out how to teach them school, and you're like, I graduated, so I didn't have to go back and didn't have to relearn it, and didn't have to do this anymore. How does faith expressing itself through love speak into your circumstance right now? How does that work at work? You're like, I don't know. I don't think I could bring up love in my meetings that I have on Zoom right now. That's no one would listen to me if I brought that up. But how does this work in your context? To serve somebody else, to empathize with someone, for someone, to sit in their seat and see things from their perspective, to value someone, to respect someone. What does that actually look like? What does that look like in your life, in your context right now? Now, if we think back, at the end of our lives, if we think back, what's most important? This is a cliche. It's a cliche for a reason, though. The value of a life is determined by how much of it is given away. We hear this over and over again, but it's so true. And let me tell you something. Your happiness depends on it. Your gratitude depends on it. Your perspective of what is important in life depends on it. Your self-leadership depends on it. It's not about how much you can amass and how much you can collect and how much you can have and how big your bank account is at the end of the day and at the end of your days. But rather, how much of your life can you give to someone else? So, decision number 1, I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. Decision number 2, I will prioritize what I value most over what I want right now. This is difficult, right? That's difficult. That's the oven is more important than the microwave, right? That's what that is. And decision number 3, I will not attempt to lead myself by myself. I will not attempt to lead myself by myself. Your history proves it doesn't work well that way. When we try to lead ourselves by ourselves, we don't know where to go. We need to lead ourselves with other people around us. In fact, I would even argue that this is the way that we're created, to be in relationship with other people, to be in community with other people. You will find community somewhere, some way, somehow. That I can assure you. It may be your Dungeons and Dragons group, or it may be your Seahawks fan football page. Who knows what you might find, where you might find your community. You will find it somewhere, though. Now, there's a big difference between just finding community and being intentional with your community and those that you surround yourself with. Something that we tell our students all the time, and something that we should tell our adults all the time too, is that our friends determine the direction and quality of our life. Our friends determine the direction and quality of our life. I believe that to be true. And that means that my decision on who my friends are and who I'm spending time with is so critical and so important. And if I just relax and allow myself to drift in a direction, I will drift into common interests, right? There's nothing wrong with the Seahawks, but I will be a Seahawks fan on that page, and that will be where I find my community. That's what I'll do. Or I'll find the hunters, or I'll find the fishers, or I'll find, like I said, the Dungeons, whatever. You will find your community somewhere. And typically, if you drift into it, it's out of common interests, right? Just what do you have in common? You do that normally, you do that naturally. The thing that's a priority, though, is to find a group of people, to find someone with common values that encourage you, that cheer you on, that push you forward, that pull you forward when you need some prodding. Those are the type of people that care about you, they care about where you're going to end up in life. And that when you have a high value of a certain direction, that they will not let you. They will hold you accountable to stay on the path that you need to stay on. They will question how you're treating each other in a marriage. They will question how you're parenting. They will question how you're at work to make sure that you are being the person that you set out to be. If it's just common interest people, they won't say anything. If it's common value people, they will hold you accountable. It doesn't feel good when someone gives us feedback, right? It doesn't feel good. There's this quote that I've been loving lately. It's by a pastor, Adam Johnson, and he's from the North Point churches, one of them over in Atlanta. He's at Brownsbridge, I believe. But he says this: when we push back from the feedback, we push back from the better version of ourselves. When we try to avoid feedback, we are avoiding a better version of ourselves. Feedback doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to have someone say, hey, this is how you can improve. This is where you got off. This is where you need to get back on. That doesn't feel good. But that's how we grow. That's how we move forward. Do not avoid honest feedback from people that you trust. And place people in your life that are going to give you feedback. And let's just be honest, common interest people aren't going to do that. If your whole, the foundation of your relationship is that you go out to the river, you go fishing with someone, you're just going to fish with them. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. But they're more than likely not going to hold you accountable to the direction that you're moving in life. So, what you value most over what you want right now, when you prioritize your life this way, I'm going to value most over what I want right now, and I'm going to include people in my life that have this same priority. Here's a warning. You're going to lose some friends, right? Because this is dangerous. This is threatening to people that are all about the common interest, common experience. This is threatening. So you're going to have some people say, why are you doing it that way? I thought we could just hang out and have fun. But now you have an intention behind it. You're going to possibly lose some friends. But it's going to be worth it in the end, because you will move in the direction that you want when you have people in your life that are cheering you on, that are encouraging you, that are moving you forward. This is why small groups are so critical and important. This is why small groups for your kids are so important. Right? It's not enough to just say, what's your church? What church do you go to? And be able to have an answer for that. The question is, who is in your life? If you're asking your kids, who is the circle of people in your life that is influencing you, that is helping you, that is encouraging you? Who are the people in your life that are saying the same things that I am, but just maybe in a different way? If they have an answer for that, great. If they don't have an answer, that's a question that you need to figure out. Because here's the reality about church. We will be here. If you need a shoulder to cry on when you're wondering, where did my son, where did my daughter wander off? How did they get off track? We will be here to help you walk through that. But if you want to avoid that, you got to have the people in their life first. So yeah, getting involved in a small group, getting them into church, it might seem like they don't need it right now, like it's not as important right now, but the moment that they will need it, it'll be too late to go find it. That's just the reality. It'll be a crying, tearful conversation rather than one of, I'm so grateful, I'm so glad that they have people speaking into their lives in that way. So let's try to wrap up here. Everybody ends up somewhere in life. Decide where that is for you. Everybody ends up somewhere. Decide where that is. Don't wander through life just aimlessly. Pick out where you want to go. Pick out the direction that you want to move in and move in that direction. How do we do that? We make our decisions that we've been talking about. We face our greatest challenge every morning in the mirror. Self-leadership. That we evaluate who we are and where we want to go on a regular basis every single day. And then we recognize that person that's looking back at us in the mirror, that they are created in the image of God. That he placed potential specifically in you for the direction that he wants you to move in. That he gave you enough strength and endurance to walk through challenging, difficult seasons of life. That he's given you a hope. And that he has created you in his image. We are his image bearers. And that means that we should look at ourselves in the mirror a different way than we typically do. We should pause. We should evaluate. And we should be intentional with our decisions. Decisions that, one, I will not lie to myself, even when the truth makes me feel bad about myself. Decision number 2, I will prioritize what I value most over what I want now. Decision number 3, I will not attempt to lead myself by myself. Now, if every single American, if every single Christian made these 3 decisions, and in light of those decisions, decided on one candidate, and just let me give you a hint. The candidate is not a Republican nor a Democrat. The candidate that has the most potential to change our country is the one looking at you in the mirror. Our country, our nation, will never be greater than the Americans in the mirror. We will never be greater than the Americans looking back at us. It's a decision to be wise with our time, wise with our energy, and to move forward in the direction that I believe that God has called you to. So let me pray. We'll wrap up today. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you do for us. God, I thank you for difficult moments and difficult conversations that allow us to grow on the other side. Lord, I pray that you would give us wisdom, that we would evaluate the relationships that are so critical, so important in our lives that we either need to pursue or we need to step back from. God, I pray that we would be wise with our time, with our energy, and that we would actually evaluate, rather than lie to ourselves, we would look at ourselves squarely in the face and see ourselves accurately, see the direction that we're moving accurately. That we would ask the question, why am I doing this really? Why am I doing this really? And that we would move in your direction, that our identity would be found in you. That we would recognize that you have the love and you have the hope and you have the peace and the patience and everything that we want and desire, you have for us. It might not look how we think it should look, but it will be better in the end. So God, I pray that we would learn to trust you and that we would lean into you. God, we thank you for everything that you do for us. In your name I pray. Amen. Thank you for being here with us today. Again, we so look forward to connecting with you soon. And I hope you have a great week, and we'll find you somewhere online soon.